and I was excited to see him announced today. Really excited.
I was surprised a little bit, but super excited for everyone to discover what a great leader Tim Walz is.
Minnesota residents weighing in on the news that their governor, Tim Walz, is joining the Democratic ticket for the White House, as Kamala Harris, who of course is from our state, picked him as her running mate. While Minnesotans had glowing reviews, Republican VP candidate JD Vance had a different take.
This is a guy who's proposed shipping more manufacturing jobs to China, who wants to make the American people more reliant on garbage energy instead of good American energy, and has proposed defunding the police just as Kamala Harris does. I think it's interesting, actually. They make an interesting tag team because, of course, Tim Walz allowed rioters to burn down Minneapolis in the summer of 2020, and then the few who got caught, Kamala Harris helped bail them out of jail.
Riverside Congressman Mark Takano served in the House with Tim Walz. He joins us now with reaction to today's big pick. Congressman, good to see you. Tim Walz is somebody you know well, is a friend of yours. Talk about how the two of you became close.
Well, when I was elected in 2012, Tim had been there already for 6 years, elected in 2006. I sought a spot on the Veterans Affairs Committee where he was already serving. We at one point were rivals for the top spot. It's kind of a long story that I don't want to get into, but the gist of it is that it was a very civil contest, very cordial, and I've grown fonder and fonder of Tim Walz over the years, and it's no surprise to me that he has come this far. I always knew he was a gifted communicator. He had a plain, every-man way of communicating, and I think he's somebody who can translate policies very well to the American people.
So eventually, just to finish your story, he got the top spot, and then you eventually got it later on.
That's right.
And after he got it, you say that he was especially good at reaching out to you and sort of bringing you guys together.
You know, after I seated and conceded the contest to him, he reached out and said, I want you to be a partner in this. I said, well, Tim, I don't want to be a second guesser, a sore loser. And he says, no. You come in, and I want you to be part of interviewing the staff for the committee, the top staffer. Tim had an amazing reach in the veteran service organizations, the VFW, the American Legion. He knew all these people really well. He's a veteran himself. Together we hired the top staff. That staff continued with me when I became the chairman. And Tim had a hand in actually assuring the caucus that I would be a great chairman by asking his friends to support me. So we became good friends over the years, and I would text him whenever he'd have a victory in Minnesota, and I say, Tim, I think someday you're going to make the short list for a VP list for some candidate. And I didn't realize it would be this soon.
How did he respond when you would say that?
Well, typical Tim is he just kind of wave it off, and oh, you're so kind, you're too kind. Kind of a very Minnesota, polite, nice thing to say, right? But I said, Tim, seriously, you are really, I think, just well positioned to do this.
Most people had never heard of Tim Walz before today. So for people that are trying to get a sense of who he is, and maybe who he is and compared to some of the other, frankly, big egos you deal with in Washington over the years, give us a sense of who the man is.
He's always been very plain-spoken. He's very popular among congressional colleagues. His instinct is to try to build relationships, never holds grudges. I've known him to be somebody, one of the things that I always admired about him was he was elected from a very difficult district. It was a Republican district. He beat out a Republican incumbent in 2006. No problems being reelected in 2008, of course, the Obama kind of surge year. But he voted for the Affordable Care Act. He learned how to compromise, as he said in the speech today, but never compromise his principles. And the Affordable Care Act is an example of that. And I think he got reelected in his district in that terrible year for Democrats in 2010. Indicates to me a deep trust that his constituents had for him.
Josh Shapiro was not picked. A lot of people thought he would be. He was the favorite going into this, the governor of the most important swing state. Real quickly, what do you make of the fact that he wasn't picked, and does that have anything to do with the fact that he's Jewish?
No, I don't think it had anything to do with the fact he was Jewish. I think the vice president is sending a strong message that this election is not about any one swing state, but it's about the entire nation. And she saw in Tim Walz somebody who achieved an agenda in Minnesota, whether it's paid family leave, whether it's the child tax credit, whether it's achieving near functional zero for veteran homelessness. She wants to do that for the nation.
All right. Congressman Mark Takano, great to see you.
Great
Thanks
seeing
for
you, brother.
coming in.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.